Cool. So my name is Erin Palashik, and I have spent the last 20 years of my life basically dealing with this. In my own way, when I was 17, I had eczema so bad over the back of my arms, they cracked and bled in my armpits. That was a fun ball. I drank lots of coffee to get through exams. I suffered from interstitial cystitis for about 10 years. I suffered from premenstrual dysphoric disorder and self-diagnosed myself because doctors didn't know what the fuck it was. I swear, anyone have any problems with that? Cool. No, I thought there was a hand that went up. I was like, you do. My apologies if I say anything that's really to the point. I'm very direct and I really need someone to stand up here and go, I don't mean any harm before I come on. Does everybody know what this is? Show of hands. Anybody experienced being in a state of fight, flight, freeze or fawn? What's your go-to? Are you a fawn? Do you know what that is? What's that? You're more of a freeze person? I've definitely gone through the freeze and the fawn stage the most. What's really dangerous about fawn, they added this one recently, is that it's a pandering to everybody else's needs at the expense of yourself. And what's expensive about that is it means you never breathe out around people. And actually what this is all going to come down to is if you don't breathe out, you don't down-regulate, you don't calm down, and you don't repair. When you don't repair, you don't get results, right? So how many of you have clients that don't get results or have been in a position where you don't get results? Cool. Too much weight? Like they can't lose weight? They start gaining weight when you start training them and they do everything right? Right? They start getting other problems, they can't cope. Anybody had that with their clients where they're just not coping? Yeah. What about not gaining muscle? Yeah, not gaining muscle. Failing to eat well, right? You struggle getting your clients to eat well, right? How many of you think they should just get it together and suck it up, right? I definitely know people who think that. And I definitely, as a kid, I grew up in a personal training and martial arts family. I definitely thought that. My mum was a bodybuilder as well. And she's very down the line, can do everything. Everybody was pretty controlled. My sister falls under, does anyone know the Precision Health Alliance somatypes? Yeah, a few of them. So Precision Health took mesoderm, endoderm, ectoderm, right? Kind of a rounder body type. The middle type is more a fit body type, and then you got your skinny, hyper, kind of sensitive people type. And they broke that into 6 different types. Well, those 6 different types seem to hold some weight, right? Most people would see me as a mesoderm type, right? I've got the sporty, a little bit thicker, I'm not super skinny. Actually, I fall more into the endoderm, ectoderm types under their system, right? So I have a tendency to suffer with cortisol response, a tendency to suffer with insulin, which means I can gain weight really easily. But ectoderms, they lose weight really easily, right? So I can also do that depending under what stress I'm under. And it's interesting as I've aged that I actually have a tendency to do this more now than that. However, I still have the watery, fluid-filled adrenal issue over here, which is why I had interstitial cystitis from a child. So I was very, very sensitive. I liked depth, and I don't respond well under pressure, basically, right? Now that person, when they're tired and exhausted, which if their adrenals are smashing out, they're going to be, what are they going to do? They're going to eat. What are they going to grab for? Whatever makes them feel good, whatever self-medicates them, and also whatever's going to give them energy. Now, I was lucky. I grew up in a fitness family and my mother knew lots about food and I was digesting that from 14. I also grew up eating wild game, living off the land, and we had chickens, right? So I was a really lucky kid. You are now dealing with people who are fed on antibiotics from a young stage, who are fed hormone-loaded foods, who don't know what a chicken looks like. They couldn't tell you what animal that came from, and sometimes I'm not sure if it came from an animal, right? You've got wheat that's not wheat anymore. It's got more gluten loaded into it than is actually natural. People have no idea. How many of you have Indian clients? I have a lot of Indian clients. How many of them think wheat is good for them? Wheat is one of the most inflammatory foods because we fucked with it so much, right? How many people think dairy is good for them? I mean, I grew up in a dairy area, right? A lot of people think dairy is good for them, right? We're fucked with it so much, it's one of the most inflammatory foods. And some people don't have the right genetic composition to even digest it anyway and get anything from it. So if I put something into the body that the body goes, what is it? What's the body going to do? I'm going to get that as far away from the vital organs as possible and store it as fat, right? So quite often what you're seeing is a response from the body to protect itself and a response from the stress system and the human that you are dealing with to protect themselves. The body never does anything against itself. Cancer is not against the body. Cancer is a response to inflammation in an attempt to protect itself. Diabetes is not against the body. It is a response to a truck ton of insulin and sugar being offloaded by the liver under sustained stress to try and rebalance. The thing is, what might save us when we're running from a tiger is the very thing that's going to kill us if we live in it. How many of you have heard the saying, oh, I'm just dealing with a bit of stress these days. I'm just a bit stressed out. Cool. These people that are saying this are saying, I'm a very poor manager of stress. That's actually what they're saying. And they don't have the skills to manage it. Now, how many of you are personal trainers in here? Cool. How many of you are body therapists? Physios, osteos, acupuncturists, Pilates instructors, group fitness? Group fitness, you're lucky in a way because you're just here to make people feel good for an hour, right? And they come in and your job is actually make them forget about everything. As a personal trainer, you're going to end up dealing with some really interesting stories if they trust you. And you're a personal trainer, so you want them to trust you, right? I have a client at the moment. She was raped horrifically at the age of 16, anally. So sorry, this is going to get a little bit graphic. She, from that, got anal fissures. Because of the pain of that, she now has hypertonic pelvic floor. She is in agony all the time. And you know what? She didn't tell her mother for 16 years. Why? Why wouldn't you tell your mother something? Anybody not told their mum something? Why didn't you tell your mum something? Didn't trust her. Right? Judgment. Right? Don't trust her because you're going to be judged. So what does that mean? Well, that means she's not safe in her home. She's not safe as a child. So when we get sustained stress response, where is it coming from? Unconscious patterning, back to childhood. Now, is her mum a bad mum? Probably not, right? And actually, if you talk to her, she's like, my mum's very supportive financially. She's very supportive about me progressing in the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she's supportive there. But she knows, and we've talked about it, that her mother doesn't want to hold space for her on this stuff. And here's an interesting trap, Indian family, right? So why would a mother not want to hold space for my child was raped? Right? Or, that's true, that's totally true, cultural issues, feels guilty. It is a parent's job to protect the child. And there's a failure there, or at least a perceived one. I don't think it's fair to blame the mother, but we're talking about how people are responding internally to stuff that leaves them stuck in this, and this robs them of everything if they stay there, right? What saves you in the short term will kill you in the long term. Do you know the current rate of chronic disease in this country? Funnily enough, I could not find a figure for having one chronic disease, just one. But when I work with chronic disease, which I've been doing now for a long time, I realized I could help with that. I started to realize most people were starting to show signs of heading down the spiral of chronic disease. The figure I could find was for more than one chronic disease. Do you know how many it is? About 27%. Does that sound like genetics to you? Because that's what they tell you, right? It's the BRCA gene that gave you breast cancer. There are very few genetic diseases you can get that when you have the gene, it's an absolute certainty you're going to get the disorder. You're going to get that disease. A small percentage. Biggest killers, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, being overweight, etc., leading to blood pressure, heart problems, etc., cancers, right? These are all big killers? Do you think any of them are an absolute certainty you're going to get them? The answer is no. And that's one of the biggest misnomers in the Western medical profession. And I am a fan of the fact that a lot of my clients would not have made it to me if it was not for the autoimmune suppressing or the immune suppressing drugs that they were put onto. But the reality is that that is a Band-Aid that treats symptoms and it does not deal with the cause. And as a result, you don't get results in the rest of your stuff. You're not going to get muscle gain on a skinny person, like that hyper skinny person. They're not going to gain muscle when they're stressed out. Why? Because they're naturally catabolic, right? The guardian type, I'm referring to precision health thing here, which is your big endomorph type. What do they do when they're stressed? Well, they're naturally here to protect the tribe and fast, so they gain weight under stress. Yes?
I found with my clients, they were like super stressed out when I actually just limited the intensity of the exercise and just got them to walk. Their bodies actually started losing weight and because their nervous system started calming. So that was just one tool, like doesn't work all the time, but if I can see that someone's turning up and they're already stressed from the get-go, I would just literally be like, let's just go for a walk and just try and like bring down it instead of putting more cortisol or pushing them to the end and they end up just burning out and getting worse. So that was just one little thing that I found. If I could see that pattern there and I'll be training this person for a while, let's just actually go for a walk and talk about if you're happy, what's bothering you, just to try and help with that whole fight or flight state. Cool.
Excellent. And when you screen a person, when they first come in, I'm guessing you ask them about medications that they're on, etc., right? So if you hear of someone on a medication for a disease, are they in fight and flight, sustained fight and flight? According to me, they are. And according to me and several other naturopathic, holistic people, what I do is holistic resurrection of the self to superhuman. I want us to grow old with grace, right? Tell me, if I pump myself full of Botox, am I going to cause an issue with this? Maybe, right? If I take birth control, which is into the hormonal system, which is messing with the system that's governed by the hypothalamus, the pituitary and the adrenal system, the HPA axis, am I going to cause problems with this? Fuck yes. Right? Yes.
Specific medications that you always see come up where people have this issue, like beta blockers prescribed for anxiety or high heart rate, certain medications that are not for disease?
Certain medications that are not for disease.
Yeah. Given the medication to treat a symptom, but they haven't had their doctor or the doctor just hasn't investigated into the root cause.
Doctors, as a general rule, do not unless they're integrated. And you can get integrated doctors, right? You can get people who are medically trained, GPs, etc. I have a friend who I refer to in New Plymouth who is a homeopath, acupuncturist, Taoist, Zen master dude. And he has more letters after his name. He was a surgeon. And when I asked him why the change, he said, because I'd rather work for the light. Now, I'm going to say a lot of stuff that's controversial, and it's up to you guys to decide what's for you and what isn't, right? Yes?
I just say that's really interesting because I actually am like a doctor. Like I've been to med school and qualified as a doctor as well, but that's kind of like what's driven me to take a step away.
Beautiful.
Medicine this year and like pursue my PT.
Nice.
To try and like bridge the gap because I just see like as much as like I love my job and it's like incredibly rewarding, it's often just like providing band-aid solutions without fixing the problem, and I kind of want to shift from reactively treating disease to proactively cultivating wealth.
Right, and that is a proactive approach to people being healthy. But how many people are actually healthy? How many of you have a meditation practice? Awesome. How many are going to start tomorrow? Very good. And look, meditation is a funny thing. I've been studying meditation since I was 20. I'm now 44. And my dad was a martial artist and he was missing a heart valve. So he was very into breath work and meditation. So I was exposed to it as a kid. And my mum was also a yogi before she was a jazzercise, jazz aerobics, jazz whatever, and then personal trainer and bodybuilder. Meditation is where we practice down-regulating out of this space. And it's where we learn why we're in it. It's where we hear our mind say funny things. So these are beautiful stories. And your question was, are there any medications that people are on that are always showing? All of them. All of them. There is not a single medication, including NSAIDs, which is painkillers. That's the one? Yeah. Because what do NSAIDs do? Now, some painkillers don't fall into NSAIDs, but NSAIDs rip your gut apart. When you've been stuck in this system for too long, the last thing that's going to collapse is the gut. That tells you, when you're looking at gut problems, that you're dealing with someone who's been in fight or flight already for a really long time, and that gut is starting to tell you they already have chronic disease occurring, but doctor's stuff is sledgehammer stuff. They can't see it yet. I have people that come to me and I look at I use various different systems, but I look at them and I look at this and I'm like, I swear to God, liver. And then I look at their bloods, liver's fine. I send them to the acupuncturist, what did you treat them for? Liver. Well, that's what I thought too. But the doctor didn't see it yet. But the acupuncturist who's using a 5,000-year-old system that is now ACC accredited found it. Most people, in fact, if you just assume we're all a bit fucked in the head, then you can relax. Yeah, with a nod from the guy who was going to beat his client up for not eating better. But how do you get someone to eat better? Sometimes first you have to slow them down, and actually what you want to do is you want to add in stuff. I haven't turned this slide at all, so we'll see what I had planned. Is everybody with me so far? What is health? Doctors think it's a lack of symptoms. Balance. How many of you train 7 times a week? Cool. One who trains 7 times a week. How many train 6 times a week? Varies on how you feel?
How sore I am the next day, or what I've got on the next day.
Cool, so decent measurement, 6.
6, 5 or 6,
Yep.
depending how sore the body's feeling.
Keeps your brain sane, doesn't it? Yeah.
And when I push it too far, then I realize, like, okay, I should have listened. Sometimes you can get into that thing of, am I actually sore today, or am I just being like lazy?
Where is lazy and where is...
Like actually, yeah.
From a meditation point of view, this is where you run a point of inquiry, where you stop thinking about your guns and you start thinking about, if I just let myself rest, how far does this go before I'm absolutely clear it's lazy, right? Versus when I go crazy, and I've had clients do that. How many people have had clients that go nuts and just starve themselves and train all the time? 2-3 hours a day at the gym, 5, 6, 7 days a week, right? What do they last like that for 3 to 6 months before they crash and then, right? Do you know the body type that's, I think, is most prone to that? Mine. Because mine, that one that doesn't handle that adrenaline so well, you look a little bit more up to the adrenaline, so your system might actually take it more, but mine doesn't. So when I was doing 6, 7 days a week, I started to get little niggles. I was a bitch, super skinny, super ripped. I could outrun you, out-kick you, out-jump you. I could do all that stuff. But I was in hell. And cystitis every other week, right? Do you guys know what cystitis is? The girls do the boys know? Burning when you pee, to the point where you don't want to go anywhere. And do you know what actually also marries with cystitis? Anxiety. Right? Flooding the system with adrenaline to the point where the adrenals become fatigued. Remember, HPA, that is governing everything, right? The hypothalamus is telling the mother gland in your endocrine system, your hormonal system, what to do, right? Fuck, we need to run. It sends off a whole lot of messages. Those messages are chemical and electrical. So nervous system, down the brain, down the spine, boom, into all the organs. Where is the kidney sitting? In our ectoderm, endoderm, mesoderm? With the muscles, right? That makes sense, right? That which is going to filter the blood has the adrenals attached onto it. The adrenals are sitting on top of the kidneys. The adrenals get that message and they go, boom, everything goes out and you are ready to run. Imagine living like that. That's your life? Cool. That must not be fun. Yeah, right? We can have a talk after if you like too, but yes.
That mention about cystitis actually reminds me of the bathroom leash which I don't know if you've heard about this, but back when women were not allowed to do a lot of things without a male escort, they used bathrooms to control women because women can't just pee on the street like men can. So not having available bathrooms mean that women can't leave the house and go that far without having to come back.
Wow. And just while we're on that topic, when it comes to women, you're dealing with a hormonal system. So you've got your somatypes, right? And you've got your basics, your endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm, right? And they've all got different hormonal dominances that when you stimulate the system into fight, flight, freeze, etc., into the 4 Fs, those hormonal differences are going to tend to suggest them towards certain chronic diseases more than others, right? Right, the bigger person, diabetes, heart disease, etc., that's really common, right? What populations do we see that in more? Well, Samoan populations, etc., have more guardian types, and they're very loving, caretaking people, right? They really look after their tribe, and they have a tendency to be bigger. That's not just because they eat crap. Like, if you really look at someone's diet, and then you look at the size of some people, you're like, calories in versus calories out definitely doesn't make any fucking sense, right? So what is going on there? Well, they're trying to care for everyone. And sometimes they're trying to care for everyone because that's how they stay safe, they stay valuable, right? So I am in New Zealand, Indian cultures and stuff are a little bit different. They're a little bit, like some of the younger generations would be the same generation as mine. I am the first of the free women. Some of you women are in there too, right? We did not have to get a man to survive. My mother saw either go live in a tiny little flat and get a shitty little job while you wait for a man, or basically live in that kind of hell, or get married. That was her reality. And I was taught by her. So I still have some enmeshment style stuff where I'm a great little 1950s housewife, etc., because it's going to keep me safe. And that's what she would have learned too. So right now we're having this big meltdown over women versus men and relationships and all that sort of stuff, and it's an incredibly stressful area of life, right? But actually what you're seeing is we're just resetting because women are finally free. And we're a bit lost, just like you guys are, right? We're all still trying to work it out. And that requires a lot more compassion. That requires us to slow down. Because until we slow down, we can't hear what the system is actually saying, which is, I just want to be free, you know? And that's for everyone, yes.
I found that some of my clients that were in that fight or flight were super stressed. They just were never hungry. So they'll just wake up and they'll just have a coffee and then they'll go all day without eating. And that was one of the things that I picked up.
Yeah,
and the ones
nice.
that were really stressed is like, they just didn't have an appetite. They just woke up and ready to
Or
go.
the opposite. Yeah, exactly.
Or the opposite.
Exactly, and it's going to depend on how their hormones are working,
Yes.
what's happening, right?
Yeah.
What does coffee do to the system?
Increases cortisol. Probably gets the,
What is cortisol? Stress.
Yeah.
What do they give you in a lot of cases if you've got skin disorders? Cortisol. So we're treating stress disorders with stress. That's what some doctors are doing, right? Actually, that's what most doctors are doing. What do we do if what do they like to inject you with if you have an injury? Well, now peptides, which is probably a better way to go, but cortisol, right? And why did you probably get an injury? Unless you were pile driven by someone, like unless you got a real accident, if you just over time wore something out, it's because that particular area was not sitting correctly as you were moving, or you just overdid it. A client of mine, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he used to strap in to do his heavy lift. Grip strength is shoulder strength, people, right? So he overstressed, he ripped his bicep tendon off. That's not a fun
I have a client
injury.
like that. He's managed to do his
Bicep tendon?
both biceps and the one in the front. All because he had those wonderful straps that attached him to the machine, which means he can do far too heavy, but he can't actually control.
And there'll be other things going on. Because he's done so much in one go, I'd be checking him for dehydration levels. I'd be checking him for early signs of chronic disease as well.
72 years old, he's absolutely fucked.
Right, so he's got a stack, right? And they're doing these crazy ass things, and how many drugs is he on? I don't want to know, right? So I'm already like, what are you doing? If I want to get gains and results, like what did I do? I train 3-4 times a week now. I have a trainer because I like having a trainer. He's as good as I am in his own way. I like to learn that way as well. And then I go for walks, I go for a run, I do a bit of interval training here and there. I kind of feel it out, do some yoga, sit in a sauna, love an ice bath. Ice baths for super skinny people, good idea or not? Flash, like cold shower, maybe, like a flash dunk, but leaving them sitting in there, these people are very sensitive and they feel the cold, and if they're hyper-stressed, you're just making it worse, right? Also, menopausal women, they might not like it either, right? So starting to think about what we're doing when we're giving advice is, who does 8 weeks to a bikini body? I definitely don't do that one. That is not my business. I do not give a shit about your bikini body. I give a shit about your health and the quality of your life and how much you can smile. What's the name of that guy that I did the video on recently? The military black guy that everybody likes. David Goggins. Ever seen him smile? I went hunting to see if I could find a photo of him smiling. It was back when he was a bit fat and younger. And when I looked at him, I went, bloodstream's off, heart, adrenals are fucked. I was talking to a friend of mine, he's ex-military in the States, and he goes, oh yeah, he stopped doing going out on reconnaissance and stuff like that because he had heart condition. And then his wife's talking, it's like, oh yeah, he's got Raynaud's, fluid field, kidneys, adrenals. And what is he doing? He's getting up and running for hours in the morning to have that incredible body, and everybody loves him. And
ultra runner, he is against everything that we go for. He's just a twat.
As a human being having a good life, he's against everything I go for, right? I can appreciate what he's done. I really can. But when people hold him up as their idol, pick your idols with their joy. Look, he makes my knees hurt watching him run too. So health is about balance. This is really important. And it's about optimal cellular function. And that's why everyone's into peptides now. They're all into redox messaging signals and all this sort of stuff. So you all know what steroids and estrogen, testosterone and estrogen and stuff like that is. And there's some really interesting work done on whether at 55 men should be injecting a small amount of testosterone, etc. Same with estrogen and estradiol, which can be really helpful when you're menopausal. But did you know some cultures didn't actually have a word for menopausal? And now we do, and it's a massive increasing discussion. And of course, we've changed what women are doing in the world as well. And women, if you ask them, are struggling with doing everything, with being responsible for everything. That will be their whinge, by the way, right? Yes?
They also make up 80% of chronic pain cases.
80% of chronic pain cases. They also are starting to die quicker, right? Because they actually did studies where they put their hand on the door at home and their stress levels go up, right? And they've been at work all day. So, yeah, women are definitely struggling in the new reality, but we actually all are, Pumping the body full of steroids as a bodybuilder has resulted in renal failure, in all sorts of other things, heart failure, etc., right? Do you think a little bit versus a lot has less of an effect? Yeah. Do you think it still has an effect? Yeah. Right? It's still going to have an effect on the system, and you are pumping something your body should synthesize into it and disrupting the HPA axis. And here's the thing about your body. It's so fucking clever that it's smart enough to start down-regulating signaling pathways. It's smart enough to start turning things off. My suspicion with peptides is we are going to find the same thing. You flood those receptors, they are going to start shutting down eventually. And I went to the most hideous thing recently, and it sounds very judgmental of me, and it is, where a bunch of people, some of them were high on coke, I'm pretty sure, and were drinking, and these are the party crowd of Auckland, and they're all sitting there going, we're going to do all these different peptides so we can stay young, be tanned, etc., right? Because you get a peptide for everything. And meanwhile, I'm sure one of the presenters was high as a kite. And I lean over to my trainer, who's sitting there as well. Has anyone told these guys that if you eat a salad and no, and throw a bottle of Coke on top, that you might as well not have eaten the salad, right? So before you go throwing peptides in or even recommending them, and I think it's really interesting what they're doing with like reconnecting in injury sites, that might be the area where I'm like, yeah, let's try that, right? Because I'm all about getting people's bodies back to functioning. But sustained and prolonged use, or use just for the sake of it, instead of dealing with what is actually going on with the person, you cannot outrun poor stress management. It will catch up with you one way or another, right? So when it comes to optimal cellular function, you are looking with the optimal cellular function you can manage by adapting food, environment, managing your breath, and stress, right? If most people are stressed out in their breath pattern, what's going to be absent? What are most people in the world not doing? Because our rate of mental health issues currently is 19%, right? So that's a recorded number. They're not breathing out, right? When you breathe in, you're grabbing for energy, right? And the diaphragm goes up, right? When you breathe out, back to the ground. In. Most people are, if you're talking all the time, which I am right now, what's my body going to be in? A state of stress, because I'm not breathing all the way out. So, if you want to down-regulate someone, what's the first thing you're going to get them to do? And breathe it all the way out, almost till there's like, push it. There's nothing left. And what happens, just take a moment now to breathe in and then breathe all the way out, and breathe till you're almost pushing it all the way. And when you really push it out at the bottom, what do you notice is happening in your muscles? What happens in your pelvic floor? Tightens, it tunes it, right? Breath tunes the system. Breath runs the central nervous system. The central nervous system is also, because it's governed by the hypothalamus, connected to the endocrine system, to your hormonal system. If your people are overstressed through that electrical system, they're also overstressed through the hormonal system, and now it's down-regulating reproduction, growth, recovery, etc., etc. Has anybody heard of the pregnenolone steal? It's like a simplified version of understanding the HPA axis. And what it basically says is, in order for DHEA, which is your repair hormone, that's mainly made in your adrenals, and then cortisol, also made in your adrenals, to be accessed, you need this bond called pregnenolone, right? But if I'm really fucking stressed out, I'm just going to grab as much of that pregnenolone for all of that stress. And then when they go to sleep at night, are they repairing? No. Now, it is oversimplified. I want to point that out, but it's a really nice, easy way to explain it to your clients, right? If you're too stressed out, there's no repair, there's no muscle gain, you're going to be fatter, like you're going to be bloated, you're going to have struggle to digest. Because what happens when we go into fight or flight? Well, it pumps blood away from the stomach, first of all, so your digestion just got down-regulated. Yes?
When they go on holiday, they'll get sick straight away, because that's when they actually relax. So if it's like work stress or things are going on, as soon as the client goes away for a 2-week holiday, they'll get sick as soon as they relax.
Exactly.
The body just
And the body does nothing against itself. So the body is now pumping out inflammation. Why? Because it needs more pause. It doesn't want you to go out on holiday, and now that it's got a moment to relax, it's like, oh good, we can deal with all this stuff. So all the inflammation comes up because it's now going into like massive overload repair mode. People are like, oh yeah, I got a bit sick, you know how it is. It's like, yeah, you were running from the tiger, you didn't have time to deal with that inflammation. Now you stopped, boom, body is happy. What do we do when people get an injury? Anti-inflammatories. Why is inflammation good around an injury? Stops you from moving it, right? When I get inflammation through my body and I feel tired and sleepy, why is that good? So I fucking need rest, right? It's really simple. The body is telling you all the time what it needs. If I'm healthy, food equals protein, and I eliminate toxins. If I'm not healthy, food stops equaling protein. It starts equaling constipation or digestion issues, and I stop eliminating toxins properly, and I get overloaded, and now I'm an inflammatory bomb. What happened to people who were inflammatory bombs during COVID? They were the most at risk. Does anybody know what the J-curve is? It's in here somewhere. The J-curve basically refers to training output. And at a low level, you're more likely to be inflamed because you're not moving. So what you guys are responsible for is getting the oxygen pumping around the body and distracting their minds from my mother this, my partner that, my child this, fuck, I need to do that, man, the tax man is after me. When you get someone training, walking, breathing, in that moment, you guys all did the breath out, do it again. All the way out. Notice how there was less in your head, less to think about. You were focused, right? So the beauty of movement and training is movement is health. It just has to be the right movement. And you just have to consider, is what I'm giving this person something their body can handle? I spent my life learning off osteopaths and acupuncturists and stuff like that and learning different bodywork techniques, massage, etc., because it was so obvious to me that posture equaled health. I could see the self-hate in people. I could see the shutdown of the heart, right? And yes, by retraining those muscles and stretching them out and getting them to breathe into their bodies. People are not in their bodies. They are stuck up here. And as a result of being stuck up here, they're in these survival areas are constantly pumping. Money, food, and sex, money, food, and sex, money, food, and sex. This is your survival region. Can I get you all to lie down on the floor? Then you wonder why you have bad relationships with people, right? As soon as you go into your survival mode, can you consider someone else? You're not meant to. You're meant to survive. Bend your knees so that your lower backs are comfortable. You don't have to if you don't want to. And place your hands below the belly button on what the Chinese refer to as one of the lower dantians. From here, what I want you to do is I want you to breathe all the way out, and I want you to pull your belly button in. When you breathe in, I want you to breathe into here. And when you breathe out, I want you to breathe out from here. Do it again. Hands up if that's easy for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, about half the room. Hands up if it's easy for you now, but when you lay down, you had to think about it for a minute. Yeah, cool. No surprises over there, eh? Hands up if you're still struggling with it. You've got to keep thinking, right? Cool. So this is a great exercise for down-regulating people. When you are lying on your back, is it easy to run from a tiger? We're going to say no, right? So as soon as you lie down, you are signaling to the system that it is okay, that it is safe. And the body does know that. As soon as you lie down, the body's like, well, I'm not on high alert anymore. So you want to down-regulate people, you can get them lying down. If you've got someone incredibly overstimulated, where's a great place to put them into exercise? Any exercises you can do on the floor, particularly any lying on their back, right? Flop over like little fishies for me, onto your tummies. Put your head on your hands, so forehead on hands, good. Take a big breath in again into the lower tummy if you can find it, or into like your lower back is another way to think about it. When you breathe out, I want you to push out from there, and I want you to squeeze your pelvic floor if you know how to, and I want you to suck your abdominals in, and I want you to lift your ribs off the floor without pushing through your arms. So you're creating what we call hollow body. And then take a big breath in again. And do it again. Push out, lift the pelvic floor. So ladies, squeeze your pink bits. Boys, lift your balls, right? And then suck your lower abs in, then pull your ribs into that, and then pull your ribs together. And try not to push through anything. Now, your pelvis should be pressed into the ground. Shouldn't be popping up. So you should feel pelvic contact. Good. Take another breath in. Do it again. Good. Thank you for that. We'll go. It's hard, right? Gymnasts are very good at this. So are ballerinas. Some of the strongest bodies and most flexible bodies you'll ever find in the world. So, for those of you that are still playing with the ribs, keep doing that. For those of you that have got this, what I'd like you to do is keep one leg very, very straight, your pelvis pressed into the ground, and as you do the hollow body, lift a leg. And don't let the ribs pop out. So you've got to keep pulling the ribs in as you lift the leg. Straight leg. Dead straight leg. Push the knees straighter. So that, yep, that's it. Straighter knees, straighter knees, straighter knees. Suck your ribs in. Some of you have got lots of height there. I would say more ribs. Good. Try the other side. And now as you squeeze the leg off the floor, if you're still trying to squeeze your ribs, give that pelvic floor another squeeze. Because one squeeze is never enough for Erin. She likes a lot of squeeze. Now, there's one situation where I wouldn't do this, and that's a hypertonic pelvic floor. But I might get them to do all the abdominal work whilst trying not to squeeze their pelvic floor, because they're going to need stabilization around their abdominals to support the pelvic floor so that it's not constantly hypertonic. And a lot of hypertonic pelvic floors are because the person is hypermobile and their bodies feel incredibly unsafe. Make sure you push that leg really straight when you lift it. So you got to reach and point. Reach and point. Yeah, now suck your ribs in more. That's it. Anybody find that easy? Good. That's a definite no from over there. Awesome. When you're ready, you can find yourself seated on the floor. There's a few notes here about ectomorphs and mesomorphs and stuff like that. What I just did was I took you through, one, how you can use breath just to relax someone. Two, what I did was I started to bring into it how you can, when you've got someone's system is completely out of whack, you can start tuning strength into it. It's not easy to lift your legs up while you're trying to do this, is it? That was hard, right? It's a fit guy. You train 6 times a week, right?
Struggle with the breathing. I've been working on that with, I think with the weight training as well. A lot of guys that lift heavy weights are chest breathers, you know, kind of short breaths. So I've had to retrain to kind of push the diaphragm out. So it's something I've actively been...
You know what else they do?
Hold the breath.
What's this? The rib flare, right? I'm leaking out of my solar plexus. This is my security, self-worth center, willpower center, right? So if we bring this into the chakra system, which I will in a minute, when we start to look at what posture's doing, when I see a guy wandering around like this, and it's usually guys I see more than girls, girls is more like this, but it's still the same thing, right? It's ego projection. This is someone who's saying, I don't love myself. I don't feel strong in myself, right? And so they're presenting in a way that's actually pretty aggressive. And there's probably a lot of anger in them. And they're probably burning through a lot of, that's a defense mechanism. They're in fight or flight, right? So when you're looking at how you're training someone, it's good to have all the movements. But if you can't brace, usually this is where I start, right? And then I'm going to get everything else going. Yes.
With that exercise with the leg, you mentioned hypermobility. What would the alternative be for that? Because I am hypermobile.
So it's not an alternative. It's that when you're hypermobile, you're going to have good access to a lot of range, but you still need exactly that, because now, like what hypermobiles do when they backbend? They're just all over the place, right? Like everything just bends. Can you activate the muscles in the bend? That's the practice. So when you're dealing with a hypermobile person, you're dealing with a very sensitive person. They kind of need to be wrapped a little bit in cotton wool because their sensory system is really developed, right? And that's it's your ectoderms, but in these somatypes here, it's the diplomat and the sensor, a little bit the crusader, but depends, right? These people, depending on where they are on the PHA system, they have a tendency to be more sensitive. They have a tendency to be generally more hypermobile. Sometimes you find it in the guardians too. You're going to get those hypermobile, hyperbendy joints. This can also turn into a chronic disease. It's going to become Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in some people, right? So, and also means their stomachs are not as developed. So the thing I'd work on with you is stomach health, breathing, and probably confidence. That's going to change your life, right? And not because I'm comparing or anything like that, just because this body type tends towards some of that stuff. And that's where looking into these somatypes is really helpful, because you're going to see the hormone dominance and you're going to see where you can work with stuff. And if you go deep into it, you can start going, well, a sensor is like a Vata type in the Indian system. What do we do with Vata types? We feed them warm, easy to digest foods, soups and broths and stuff like that. When I see one that doesn't like that kind of food, my little radar goes up, something's not right here. When they're all eating raw food and salads and stuff like that, I'm like, ooh, the Vata is going to be really upset. Yeah? Pitta body type, damp. So I got to watch the damp foods, you know? So if I'm bloated and watery and all that sort of stuff, what am I going to do to get rid of that damp? I got to watch high sugar. I've got to go a little bit more plant-based, because also the diplomat has a less developed stomach, right? A little bit better developed than a sensor type, but I'm going to be able to see some of these things based on this. So it's worth, whether you go through the Ayurvedic system, the Chinese system, the PHA system, whatever it is, even just your basic mesoderm, ectoderm, endoderm, because I had that before up, you can see how that system has developed. You're going to see what hormones help develop that, and you're going to see the precursors to chronic disease that are going to come up as well. But you're also going to see, how do I make this person happy in order for them to build muscle, lose weight, and feel at ease, right? So there's your HPA axis, basically. And so keep in mind what happens to the system when it goes into stress, that there's a whole lot of like cardiovascular response, respiratory, the sensory, everything livens up, right? Heart rate goes up, metabolic response, blood sugars are pumped into the system. What's diabetes? Sustained version of this response, and you're going to see diabetes what? In the bigger types, right? Because they have a predisposition to that because of insulin being dominant in their system. When you see someone who's really like edgy and alert and maybe a little bit shaky, you're seeing this response. Breath rate. We already discussed people don't breathe out. So how many people are stuck in fight or flight most of the time? Most of us, right? Slow digestion and gut signaling reduced. And that's a big problem, right? Because now they're not absorbing what they're eating. And so what are they going to do? They're going to eat more because the body is hungry and starving. And it's really, really stimulated. So it's desperately grabbing for energy. Why? Because it wants to be able to run from the tiger, but it's also increasing blood sugar, which is one of the reasons why, you know, some people don't actually want to eat anything, because this is also being pumped out and cholesterol is being pumped into the system. Right? Liver's breaking down cholesterol at a rate of knots. So high cholesterol, it's that. What do? They give them drugs for that. Yes.
Does the flop come into this at all?
Yes, absolutely. And it just depends on where the person is at, right? Eventually, something's got to give. That's the bottom line. At some point, something's got to give. I saw a story this morning about a yoga student who went off she's a Kundalini instructor. She went off to learn Ashtanga. They did some kind of breath work, trauma thing. Now she's totally collapsed. Now, she'd actually had problems with her mental health, but was stable in the last couple of years. She managed to get some money out of the yoga people that taught her. And I actually think that's a bit unfair. Like at some point you have to be responsible for yourself and know what, and hold your own boundaries. And that's the other thing we need to teach our clients, is to hold their own boundaries as well while we're learning it ourselves. Because most of us are shit at that. And when you don't hold your own boundaries, you're in fawn, right? So you're still in that system. I wanted that to move on. So just running through these, there's your short-term benefits. Reduces allergic reactions until they explode out the other side, right? So everything looks good, then they start relaxing. Now they've got something else to deal with. Sharpens sensory awareness, increases blood pressure, so high blood pressure, so basic. Yeah.
Random question.
Yes, probably not, but yes.
If you live in a fight or flight mode for a duration of time, you're not necessarily worsening. Is it like your body gets used to it and that becomes a new norm?
You are worsening, you just can't see it yet. The truth is that the body is always looking to survive. So it is going to do its very best to survive in fight or flight as best it can for as long as it can. And coming back to what you were asking over there, at some point something will downregulate or stop or pause, and then the system erupts. But the truth is it just depends on, when you're looking at stress in the body, it's a balance of stresses. So we have the trauma response that, can put us into fight, flight, etc. What about chemical overload? Your system can be just responding to a bunch of chemicals in your environment, and it can go into fight or flight. Because your stress response is to perceived threat, supposed threat, or actual threat. An actual threat can be bad food. It can be, it can be something that you're eating that you're allergic to and you didn't know. And the body's learnt to cope and survive. Why? Because it always wants to be able to run. I'm allergic to dairy. I used to drink so much dairy, they called me mullet, right? Because I drank so much milk. My mum's also called Moo. It's a really long story. But I drank so much milk. When I worked out that my waist grew an inch over the course of a day, and then I cut dairy, and then I realized, dairy actually, now that I reintroduce it, makes me run to the bathroom straight away, which it didn't do before. My body had learned to survive. But inside, it was having a frickin' meltdown, and it was throwing out other things. Dairy and skin issues, right? Pitta and skin issues. You'll look at the body type, you're going to see what the problems are going to be if their body is overstressed. If you're thinking about yourself, liver. Just as an FYI. Bad heat. She's done some work on that. Excellent. So, and there's your sustained response system. What's going to happen, which we'll talk about. Brain fog. I forgot that one, right? People can't focus at work, right? And that very easily affected by shitty food, right? Shitty food and the system shuts down. What else could be missing? Not just shitty food. We live in a world where poor people eat food and rich people eat supplements. The reality is, especially if your gut is already suffering and not, your gut cell lining is one cell, or your gut lining is one cell thick. It's very easy to perforate. And coffee will do it almost every time, right? A food that your body doesn't like, that can create leaky gut. What happens when you have leaky gut? You get food particles in your liver. What happens then? Well, your liver gets upset. What happens if I'm not taking in enough vitamin D? Vitamin D becomes an active hormone through the liver and the kidney, right? But I need actually a whole lot of other stuff for that too. I need sulfur, I need magnesium, I need selenium, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into what it takes to have a healthy hormonal system. And I'm vegan. I'm like the poster child for, hey, you've not got enough B12. So what do I take? I take a B12. However, I've worked with all sorts of people for years, bodybuilders, rugby players, ballerinas, and super chronically fucked people as well. And what I can tell you is most of them are not getting their B12 because they don't methylate well. And they don't methylate well either because of a genetic SNP, that's what it's called, or because their system has fallen into this, and methylation is the first thing to drop out. So I have someone come into me, the first thing I go is, yeah, we're just going to put you on this methylated B complex, right? any problems at all. And what's that going to help with straight away? Brain fog. Any questions on this one before I move on? Cool. What have I got here? Lowering stress. So this is kind of my basic. This is probably what you want to investigate more as time goes on with your clients. This would be where I start looking. I want to make sure their environment is clean. What does that mean? One, tidy room, tidy mind. That is true. That is going to lower stress. The second one is chemicals, right? Hormone disrupting chemicals. I said I smelt bad when I came in here. It's because I don't wear any perfume. Why not? It's a hormone disruptor. It's instantly going to fuck with my estrogen. Estrogen is my god hormone. And what does estrogen dominance look like? Well, I'm a pitta body type. I can tell you, watery, cellulite, depressing. Why do men not want to take the men's pill? The same reason women shouldn't take it. Because they get suicidal and depressed and gain weight and it lowers their libido. Why? Because too much estrogen will do that to you. And so will having hormone endocrine disruptors in your environment, including your man's perfume, which is food for thought. You know that hideous ad they have now where you can spray whatever Rexona it is across your ass and all over your body? I'm like, please don't. Please don't do that. I meant to get a picture of that because there's a big billboard near my house. Correct nutrition, so making sure the food is right, and making sure the food is right for the somatype. If that person doesn't digest easily, are you going to give them meat? No. I had a Crohn's patient, and she had taken, from 3 years old, she had stomach problems recorded. And they were like, it's in her head, it's in her head, it's in her head. It's even the mother, it's in your head, right? By the time she was 27, she'd gone to various different specialists, and she finally got a diagnosis for Crohn's. Crohn's is a killer, right? And it robs your life. That's a severe stomach problem, which means she went through other stomach problems before she even got there, right? It doesn't just suddenly erupt in your system at 3 years old. We put her on a blended banana diet and she stopped falling asleep at her desk at 3 p.m. Why did I do that? Overripe bananas will help rebalance the stomach and realign the stomach. There was a lot of stuff she was reacting to, and we just really needed her to get through a day without falling asleep. The blended bananas means she didn't have to work on the digestion. The fact they were overripe meant they were prebiotic, as opposed to greener bananas, which are going to do the opposite to the gut lining, right? So one of those situations where, yes, the rules are we should have protein and we should have carbs, and you know what? We just need to get something into the system that's going to keep it awake to begin with, and your brain is a carb machine. So you can start there with simple, easy, digestible carbs. I'm a pitta body type, I'm a diplomat, I'm a natural plant-based eater, right? An activator type or crusader type, I'm not quite sure which one you are, I haven't had a good look, might be more meat dominant. Sensor, definitely more plant-based, more cooked, more et cetera, right? Breath work. This is your lead into meditation. This is your central nervous system. This is how you change your life and everyone else's around you, because you can change your frequency and everything else from there. And from there becomes hip stabilization, which starts with pelvic floor. If you've got a hypertonic pelvic floor, it's a more difficult problem. And as the woman said in the last thing that I was in, sometimes you need an expert to help you with some of these problems, like people who specialize as physios in pelvic floor stuff. I agree and disagree, because sometimes they do stupid things. So you need to educate yourself and back yourself, right? One of my clients with severe pelvic floor, hypertonic pelvic floor at the moment, she had someone sticking stuff up and around in there, right? And she was raped. And I was like, I wouldn't have had, like, I got her after the fact, unfortunately, right? They wanted to test the tonic nature of the muscles, but she can't touch in there. Nobody else should be, until she can claim that back for herself. And I would have and have reinforced her own feelings on that, which is, let's just breathe. Because what happens when I breathe all the way out? That pelvic floor is being tuned, right? So, and I've given her a few different breathwork techniques, which I want to go over with you guys. How much time do I have? Oh, I have heaps of time. Excellent. So hip stabilization, huge. She's hypertonic. So in her case, pelvic floor is the thing that I want to have relaxed. That's breath work. But I want to have all the other muscles, because she's hyperbendy and she false reads. I want to have all the other muscles work. So I need to get her TVA working, transverse abdominis. I need to get the muscles in the hips doing all sorts of things. So I'm going to do hip stabilization from like getting min and med and all this sort of stuff to work, right? And when I get her working out, she is going to focus on breath. Doesn't need to be heavy. She doesn't have a problem with weight anyway. I need the muscles to work, and I don't want them to work in the way that they love to work. I want them to work in the way that is going to be supportive so that that pelvic floor can relax. Now, yes, there's a trauma component there. Obviously, her pelvic floor is protecting her as well from invaders. That is a longer process. But in the yogic system, do you know what yoga means? Any yogis in here? The word yoga means union. And the way the yogis work, obviously a yoga practitioner, the way yogis work is we start with the body. And when I started my work doing what I do, I started with the body. And it just started to make sense to me until I got to the point where I teach people meditation and I teach them how to manage their stupid minds. Because your mind is stupid. You are very clever, incredible, sentient God beings. That's true. And your mind is a tool. It is not what you are. Your body is not what you are. You are so much bigger than you will ever be able to put words to, because the mind is limited and language is limited. But when you breathe out and you breathe in and you observe, you might just catch a glimpse of how big you really are. But it is only a glimpse. Hip stabilization and foot strengthening. Interesting fun fact. Feet are the biggest fetish, the most popular fetish. Do you know why? I think this anyway. Could be to do with syphilis and long dresses and wanting to look up skirts. Don't know. But, so they got into feet. But it could be that the pelvis and the feet grow out of the same place along the Wolffian Ridge. A little bit of embryological fun for you there. Right? So there's a direct connection between how your core works and how your feet work. And you'll notice I have grounding in there. What's the first port of call for foot development? Or rather, what's the first thing that broke your feet? Anything wrapped around them, right? Shoes and socks are sensory deprivation chambers for the feet. 200,000 plus sensors in those things and these things that are feeding your brain. And when you feed your brain, just like you do with any movement practice, it goes up, it goes down, and it starts feeding and creating neurological connection. Well, you're breaking it, right? How long does it take for the blood to circulate the body, roughly? About 21 minutes. So how long do I want to walk on the ground for to down-regulate my system and tune my feet a bit after wearing shoes all day? About 21 minutes. As soon as you guys should go outside after this, take your shoes off and walk 10 paces slowly, watching your breath, and just notice what shifts and changes in you. And you know what? A great way to train people that you want to get losing weight, that you don't want to have them run, walk them up a hill, nose breathing, barefoot. Make sure they watch their feet. They will stub their toes and they do bleed. Because people are used to not having to watch. They're completely unconscious to their feet, right? And do you know what? When you go do that, the first time I went barefoot walking with one of my teachers, my feet were on fire. I was like, oh my God, look at all the information I've been missing. You know, I also stubbed my toe. That's a true story. He was like, oh my God, I've broken you on the first one. And it bled everywhere because my feet were super dry from the dust because they're not used to it, right? People are like, oh, walking barefoot. Some people don't even like to look at their feet. That's a work in progress. Foot massage every day, 5 minutes. What's massage? Definitely has a quality of inquiry. And it's important to know that, right? It's important to know that it's not just enough to sit and want a nice car. Because that's what mindfulness became, right? I want stuff, so I'll sit here and I'll visualize and I'll law of attraction it. But the truth is, if you raise your frequency, your life changes. You don't need to think about so much what you want. Yeah, what you focus on becomes your reality. But a lot of the time, who wants more money? Hands up, who wants more money? How much do you focus on that? Do you know why that's not working for you? That's actually not a bad answer, but that's not why it's not working for them. It's actually because there's a whole lot of other thoughts in there that tell them why they can't have that money. There's a whole lot of preconceived money, relationship, and religion. There's a whole lot of gunk around all of that stuff. We have all these thoughts and stuff like that that actually we need to unpick. I grew up in a very, very poor household. I was taught, and I quote, money doesn't grow on trees. I now live, I don't even know how I live, but I live really well. I eat everything I want. I travel when I want. I do what I want. I live in a house that I think is a little palace. I don't own it. I don't care, actually, right? Has not been my focus. But how did that come about? Well, I had to pick apart my distrust that the universe was going to provide for me. And I did that by listening to my crazy-ass thoughts and listening to some of the shit that came out of my mouth. You know, where did that thought come from? Oh, my parents taught me that. That's not mine, right? If I want to be successful as a personal trainer, I need to do X, Y, and Z. To make money, I have to do this. These are all stresses. Someone is telling you how to do it. It's good to listen to people who've been successful, but you have to feel it in your system that it's for you or not. You have to learn how to trust yourself. And you're only going to do that if you learn how to relax into yourself. Because when you're in fight or flight, what do you see? What do you hear? Limited stuff because you're trying to survive. Your brain down-regulates because all your blood is trying to get you to run from a tiger, right? Meditation is the practice of meditative frequency so that you can move through the world in a meditative state. The better you get at this, and I heard a friend of mine talking about this the other day, the better you get at meditation, the more enlightened you get. And enlightened just means I see myself. That's all it means. I am illuminated to who I am and how this body of mine is trying to keep me safe and whether I need that or not. You know, I know my tripwires. I know my shit. I know my light. I know what I'm good for too, right? I can see all of it. That's all that enlightenment is. But the better you get at it, the more shit life is going to throw at you, right? Life's funny like that. But the more cool stuff comes too. And my friend was talking about this. People think that you're going to achieve the perfect body one day. Really? How long does that last? Anyone done a competition? Right? You have? Yeah. How long did it last? Day? A week? Right? And then it's gone because everything is always moving. We live in a world where people are thinking, I'm going to get that and then I'm going to be happy. You might as well be happy now because I can tell you if you get it, it probably won't give you what you think it will. And once you get there, you probably realize it's not what's going to make you happy. I saw a guy walking out of Les Mills City the other day, because that's one of the places I work, and he had it printed across his back, get fit, get money, look after the family. And I was like, where's the bit about love being yourself, enjoy yourself, have a great time, you know, play. Understanding emotional mastery, that's the bridge there. And it is worth researching and listening to some of the masters talk about this. I listen to people doing that all the time. Everything from Gabor Mate to Sadhguru to Osho to Carolyn Myss to Gangaji, and I've been doing it for 20-something years. And it's one of the reasons I understand that some of the shit that I do is not really me. It's just survival shit. But it is the way I survival. It is the way this body wants to try and create that survival. And the more I know it, the less I shit it on others. And the less I shit it around in my life as well and screw it up, you know. People are in such a hurry to save themselves, they don't realize they can breathe out, take a beat, and make a decision in a few moments when they feel like it. You know, talk to my friend Michael at the back. I make him wait all the time, right? You wait for 3 weeks for me to get back to him because I'm waiting to see what I feel, you know. And if he asks, have you decided yet? I'm like, still feeling that one out. Give me a minute, you know. And if he's smart, he gets on with his fucking life. You know, he doesn't wait for me. He does what he feels is good for him. Man, imagine a relationship like that. The results of not being grounded. Your feet, your breath, your ability to sit on the floor, right? So I had a lot of you sit on the floor, and one of the reasons I wanted to do that was just to get you on the ground, right? This is where we started. There were no chairs. These are all relatively new things. And you know what they do? They destabilize the pelvis. And every time I have to get up off the floor, right now, this is the antithesis of squatting, right? So this is the unwind of the squat. When I go to stand up, oh, my pelvic floor just went on, by the way. Whole lot of muscles just had to work. Big, energetic movers. You want people to lose weight? Sit them on the ground. Are you going to run from a tiger easily from there? No. And there's multiple different sitting postures, right? This one here is even more relaxed than this one. This is side saddle. And side saddle, this is how I test people to see what their mobility function is, right? When they sit like this, can they? What's happening? Are their hip flexors really tight? You know? What can I see when they sit? Do they need to sit up straight? No, it's the antithesis of standing. I can relax here. We sit in those things way too much, right? You sit in a box, you sit at a desk, you sit on the couch, you sit in a car, you sit on the toilet. Most of us are starting to learn now that in order to defecate correctly, we should be squatting. Most people can't squat. Why? Stomach. Stomach is fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? Where are the stomach lines in the acupuncture system? They run the squat lines. So you want to help someone's stomach, what could you get them doing? Great. You're going to load something on their back? No, right? You got someone in fight and flight? Body weight, right? Get them to do that first. If I had issues with getting them to squat deeply, maybe I start hacking around that, trying to get their hip flexors stronger, right? Because what gets switched off when they're sitting? What ends up shortening and becoming weak? Hip flexors, right? And hamstrings, right? And it's going to depend on the tilt. That's right. Yeah. So what am I seeing? Right? Where is this? I saw something really cool the other day. I like to binge lots of videos before I do something like this. And I learned a lot of pull check in my early years doing personal training. And some guy had put on that there is like that anterior tilt's not really an issue, right? Even though 87% of the population have it. And I'm like, right now what is happening is I'm stuck in a back bend and loading into my kidneys and my digestion and my reproductive system. That's the whole endocrine system, right? So is this a problem? If this is how I'm stuck, yeah, it is. I definitely want to have access to all of this, yeah? But if I'm stuck here or I'm stuck there, I mean, look what's happening to my posture. What does it tell you about, you know, my willpower, my self-love, my everything? Also, there's something really interesting going on in the sexual chakra here. It's true, right? And the funny thing is that you're living in a world, nice to see you, you're living in a world where you have been taught shame about sex, where your stomachs are fucked, and so when it comes to what's happening in the chakra system and nobody's breathing down into here, right? Everything's coming from there, and it's all survival. And when this is off, everything else is going to be off. Compassion is here. This is the bridge. You know, the bridge to your divinity. But this, when this is off, the top doesn't stand a chance. So my feet are connected to this area. My ability to get this all moving is going to rely on my feet moving. It is going to rely on my breath. And so I definitely want to go out there and get grounded. I definitely want to start getting people on the floor, even for a few minutes a day. I want to use blocks and props and stuff like that. Anyone can't sit well cross-legged? Can you show me? Do you mind? Not bad. Do you mind if I bring you up? Is that okay? Cool. So the ability to sit cross-legged and the ability to breathe down low, big, real big. Do you mind? What was your name?
Naira.
Naira, nice to meet you. All right, cool. Sit cross-legged for us and I'll point something out to you. So what we have here is her knees are in an unsafe position, and that makes you try to want to hold on, right? So we've got tight hip flexors, first of all, but it also means how do you feel your breathing is? Short. Well, she's stressed. That's not comfortable, right? Do me a favor, sit on that one for us. Yep. Now what I get people to do is I get them to get stacks of towels. How does that feel? better, right? I would still say not low enough, and I'd probably start looking into opening up what's going on in the hips for this person. Do you squat much?
No, because I have a injury that prevents me.
Cool. Have you had surgery on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I've got a surgery issue here as well, so that's something that I'd start to look into. But here's the thing about surgeries and scars. That's trauma. She is falling into that scar because her body is trying to protect herself from that thing. And she had a previous injury there too, right? So this whole area here keeps tightening up. And she's going to avoid sitting cross-legged because it's uncomfortable and it stresses her out. But actually, this is one of the things that's going to help keep the soft tissue open around that scar, right? Also body work, massaging it, all this sort of stuff. And what is that going to do? It's going to down-regulate the stress, etc., etc. Just massaging yourself is you down-regulating. It's taking a pause for yourself, right? I would probably give her a stack of towels. I'd probably work on her hips. I'd probably give her a few other things. If I throw her into side saddle, so if we take this one and we just wrap it like that. Cool. She actually sits better in this one, and she is on the block, so that is going to change the read. How does that one feel? A little bit awkward. Where does it feel awkward? On the foot?
Yeah.
Right, so the tops of her feet are tight, right? Which also means her quads are tight. Why? Because it's part of the stomach chain. So probably sitting like this. How does that feel? In a kneeling position?
Probably can't go all the way back on this
Yep.
side.
Yep, because the quad is tight, right? So what I might do, how can I use padding to make sitting on the floor easier? And why is this important? And she's still not quite comfortable. I can see that in her body. But I'm going to want to try and make these things more comfortable for her and find different ways. And I have people far more limited than you that do a lot of floor sitting, but that quad is tight. So couch stretch, right? Anything that's going to open up that quad as much as possible. Massage, foam rolling. And not foam rolling for the sake of foam rolling. On its own, it's kind of, that was 2 minutes, cool, you know. But foam rolling and then sitting in this position might be interesting. Yeah? So I try to get people into these positions, but I also test them because it tells me how stressed their body is already. She's walking around with a bit of stress in her body, and that is hitting her fight or flight system all the time. Thank you so much. So, and same with sitting straight-legged, you can put that under the butt as well, right? There are some people who are going to really struggle with some of these things depending on what you've got going on, right? This posture here, a lot of people look at this and go, oh, that's not a real, like, why would anyone want to do that? Well, if I was barefoot and I needed to dig something out of my foot, this is an archetypal posture of repose. It is actually essential mobility for your system, right? But you don't want to force this. Sitting like this for a long time can start to help. You can start to move things into different postures, etc., right? But getting people on the ground, on the floor, grounding into the earth itself. This is not the earth. People say to me, I walk around barefoot at home all the time. That's nice. It's not a lot of variance for your feet to learn to be, you know. You guys go and walk out on the grass with your feet, with your shoes off, and notice what happens in your system. That's why they're all talking about grounding. 20 minutes a day and barefoot stimulation. So what else have we got here? Sleep. Who likes to sleep? I'm a diplomat, I like to sleep. Yes! Sleep is my favorite thing. I don't do clients before 7 a.m. in the morning, and I only do 2 a week at that time. Because fuck getting up early and having to deal with people. That does not suit me at all. Some people, do you like getting up early?
I don't, but I do it anyway.
It does anyway. Okay, cool. You do it because that's the job, right? My job doesn't dictate my life.
Well, I feel that. No. That's
Yeah.
I feel sometimes I don't like it, but when I get up early, I've trained my clients and then I've trained myself. I feel very productive, and so I feel like a sense of accomplishment. Whether that's good all the way, maybe not, but I've definitely.
Oh, interesting. Why do you say that?
Because I'm doing it, but I don't really want to do it.
Okay.
But then I'm feeling good once I've done it, so it's like a little push at the same time. But then it depends. The clients that I train really early, are also clients that I've been training for a long time, and they've got really good energy, and they actually lift me up. So
I only let people in that slot at that time as well. Same thing.
That's why
Yep.
know, I'm able to do it because it's the first person I see, and I'm coming with a certain energy, and they're reciprocating that. So that gets my day.
And you
started.
appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yep,
So
cool.
It starts my day on a positive.
Cool.
Yeah.
What I would say to you is does it matter in this life if you achieve anything at all?
Say that again.
Does it matter in this life if you achieve anything at all? No. So if we are looking for achievement, it matters that it's fun. Yeah?
100%.
Right? Because if I'm trying to achieve something to prove something, I'm back in that fawn kind of reality, right?
Trying to achieve something to balance your mental health, you have something to strive for as a human.
There's nothing wrong with having stuff to strive for. What I'm talking about is what is your motivation? And when we're talking about the 4 Fs, right, there's that fawn category that they've added in, which is super fascinating because it's I'm going to appease others by appearing valuable. I'm going to qualify some valuability in my life. You are valuable as you are. You don't have to do anything to be worth something, right? You are worth more sitting there doing nothing than anything you're going to do over your entire life because you're God in my eyes. And when you really sit down and you drop into yourself, you're going to get a whisper of what I mean. There is something in there that is so valuable. There is nothing you're going to do in this life that's going to make you any more valuable. So if you're going to do it for the fun of it. Do it because it feels good. Do it because it's expansive. Do it for the experience of it. Do it for the emotional high. Do it for the emotional creative low. That's also valuable too, right? Van Gogh painted some really cool stuff while he was cutting off his ear. Interesting experience. I'm not against that, right? But understand that what we're doing here on this earth is not justifying our value. That's where we get caught in fawn, trying to find safety by being valuable. Sleep. I love sleep. What I've done here is I've listed a bunch of supplements that you're going to need to optimize your sleep. And the reason you need all of this stuff is because without it, the hormonal system's not going to function properly. If you are a vegan or someone who's not methylating B vitamins well and you're low, you won't sleep properly. I have proven it many times with one of the gadgets that I use to measure sleep, right? If you are not getting enough vitamin D, how much vitamin D is recommended on a daily basis? 1,000 IU is the RDA, right? How much do you get from the sun in 10, 20 minutes? Varies on skin color, you less than me, him more than me, right? So because of the way we synthesize vitamin D through the skin, provided that we leave the sun on our skin afterwards and we don't just go straight, have a shower straight away, it actually does make a difference. It's got to you got to leave the skin cells and it all doing its thing for a little bit of time. But somewhere between 4,000 and 20,000 IU per 10 to 20 minutes in the sun with no sunscreen on. Yeah. And it's, like I said, less for you, more for him. Who suffered the most during COVID? What color skin? Darker people. Lower vitamin C synthesization through darker skin because of melanin response. So they were more suffering. Areas like the Congo apparently had lower rates. Why? Because people work outside more. Right? Vitamin D was huge in that. I don't even think I'm allowed to say that, but vitamin D was huge in that. Right? Yes?
You can also use mushrooms to get vitamin D, so they already have vitamin D in them.
Different
They
D.
leave them outside. They also further absorb vitamin D before you cook them.
Yeah, different vitamin D, but yes, and totally valuable. Specifically, D3 you get from the sun or from a supplement. And it needs to be in balance with K2. Otherwise, you look like you're K2 deficient from taking all the vitamin D. So get a supplement that has both. I love to get in the sun without sunscreen on, and then I sunscreen up once I've done my dosing. I don't use shitty sunscreen. I use organic sunscreen because there's lots of discussion about that, worth looking at. And again, going back to endocrine disruptors. What is in your sunscreen, right? So vitamin D, magnesium, how hard is it to get magnesium into your system? Really hard, right? So you want something that's easily absorbable, bioavailable, and spray it on your skin, soak in an Epsom salts bath, whatever it takes. All of these things are contributing to the function of your endocrine system. Cholesterol. You need cholesterol to process your vitamin D to do all of this stuff, right? Vitamin D becomes an active hormone once it passes through the liver and the kidney. Selenium. I'm a vegan. We have selenium deficient and magnesium deficient soil. Take a fucking supplement, right? Selenium's also in Brazil nuts. It's in lots of different meat products and stuff like that. But if you've got plant-based eaters, be aware. I screwed that one up recently. And then when I had corrected it, I was like, I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep all the time, right? All of a sudden, my body went, oh, thank you, you know? So cholesterol, there's such a thing about cholesterol. And of course, when you're in fight or flight, your system is dumping, your liver is dumping cholesterol into your bloodstream. And then they're blocking cholesterol. And it's like your body is trying to survive. And you're messing with it from the wrong end by treating the symptom. And actually what you need to do is calm the system down and then balance the cholesterol between your omega-3s, 6s, and 9s, right? So an omega-3 is the one we focus on. And yes, there's a difference between fish oil and hemp oil, for example, or other omega-3s. They're different length chains. I'm vegan. I don't take the fish oil one. There's also a problem with fish oil that it can go off very quickly, right? Unless you're snap freezing fish on deck, livers of fish heat up and the oils start to shift and change. Also looking at algae is really interesting because that's what fish eat to get the omega-3s. So B2 and B3, MSM, sulfur. Who eats greens? Who eats silver beet, kale, spinach? Who eats organic? Keep your hand up really high. Sort of. Cool. Who eats apples? Who eats organic apples? Berries. Something called the Dirty Dozen, you should all go look it up, right? Full of glyphosates. What do glyphosates do? They fuck with the gut, right? So they're already destroying the gut and they strip sulfur out of your system. So you may find you need MSM in order to convert that vitamin D. Cheap supplement, horses get given it because horses are worth lots of money and they care more about horses than us, right? So MSM, magnesium, selenium, all of this stuff's going to lower inflammation. If your body's inflamed, you are going to be more in a state of stress. So you're looking at stress stack, right? If I've got someone who's got a trauma issue and their diet and everything else is in line and I'm working on their posture, which is also going to determine stress, right? Because the spinal alignment matters because it is the central nervous system and that is governed by the hypothalamus and the HPA axis, right? So if I'm doing all my best there, now they only have to deal with their trauma response, right? So I can lower the other stresses. When I start lowering the other stresses, what happens? The chronic disease starts falling down. If I want it to hold, because I spent a lot of time in my life basically getting all the food and all the, all this like physical stuff aligned, going the yogic way. I tuned the body first. But there are two parts to union in yoga. And the other one is the mind, right? Funny thing about trauma stories, everybody tells you the horrific story, and I've told you some horrific ones today. Do you know what the biggest problem is in a trauma story? Remember I told you about my friend earlier who didn't tell her mum for 16 years about that rape? That is the problem in the trauma story. That there's no one there to hold space for them, right? What people are actually having problems with is a lack of support. And they tell the story over and over again, and that becomes what we call woundology. Now they present the story instead of themselves. It can become a defense mechanism, right? And I'm not blaming, this is not about blaming anyone. This is not about victim blaming. This is a natural process, and we actually have a system that quite often encourages it. But actually the biggest problem is people don't feel supported. And they really just need that. And sometimes they just need to know that they've forgotten how to ask for support because they felt so abandoned when they were young. And when does that abandonment start? I have a client who's in remission psoriatic arthritic and used to be diabetic for 35 years until we started doing work together. And his mother was a nurse and his aunt was a nurse. And he's part Maori, so they were Maori. And these are incredibly strong, powerful women back in the day, like he's in his 60s. So these are pioneering women. And from a really interesting part of our society as well, being that they're Maori, doing these things. He is terrible at asking for help. And you know what? He quite likes going into hospital. Funny that, right? Because all the people that would have got all the attention when he was a kid were all of those sick people. He's great in hospital. He's like the best patient ever. And he loves the team. So people are looking for support. You are not going to be their be-all and end-all. Don't do that to yourselves, right? Sometimes you need to know that you need to get them to get help and you need them to ask for help. My Crohn's client, as soon as I put hands on her to fix her, I felt a wash of emotion come over me. I was totally blasted. I just went, you're going to need a therapist. And I knew. I saw it all. I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. And of course, she eventually had flashbacks as to what had happened to her when she was very, very young, right? So you need to know also that when you're dealing with trauma, tread with care. And as much as you can hold space for the story, letting someone repetitively tell a story is actually letting them reintegrate the stress response over and over and over again. And when you get good at something, it's very hard to get out of it. And that's why we're looking at breath, sound, prayer, meditation, letting go. Trying not to identify with something that's not what we are. We are not our body, we are not our mind, and we are definitely not our fucking trauma stories. There's the list. You guys might want that. Thank you. Vitamin C. How many people take vitamin C? Can I see clearer hands? About half the room. Cool. My clients always go, I'm going to eat mandarins. I'm like, awesome, take extra vitamin C. How much vitamin C do you take?
At a time, maybe 2 grams, twice a day.
Cool. High dose or liposomal?
I have liposomal as well, but it's sometimes a bit hard, so I just pop 2 caps.
Cool. I have both. Who knows what liposomal is? Cool. Awesome. Worth finding out what liposomal is, right? So any vitamin C, I would say minimum of 5 grams. I take usually about 10 grams a day. You sweat it out. It's water soluble. Same with some of your B vitamins, right? Magnesium. These things are water soluble. Every time you sweat, do you people sweat? I have a feeling you all sweat a lot, right? Put it back in. If you measure your sleep and it's worth doing, and you find something's not working, but you think everything's in there, sometimes it's just vitamin C. And again, another one I've played with, where I'm like, what's wrong? I haven't taken my vitamin C for a few days, right? Anything else I've missed there? No. B12. I mean, also for stress, that B12 is, and the methylated B vitamins is huge. You're going to have people who are just stressed out because they're just low in that vitamin and their brain's just not functioning well, and they're actually struggling to just deal with everyday stuff because their body's just not quite functioning properly, right? So that methylated B vitamin and the C, they're huge. They're my first 2, right? Vitamin C and methylated B vitamins. Okay, so spiritual, perceptual, expressive, emotional, personal, relational, tribal. Most people are stuck here. Tribal, relational, sex and food. And then that has a knock-on effect to here. Your confidence. And most people are struggling in a confidence zone. And so even words of affirmation about themselves can be super useful. Tribal, looking for partner, looking for family, family traumas, stuff where you didn't feel supported. That's why their hips are unstable. That's why their pelvic floors don't work properly. That's why they're eating everything, right? Or fucking everything, right? They're trying to satisfy this. And they're putting all sorts of tension and junk and stuff like that. You are very sensitive beings. You don't realize how sensitive you all are. The more you hug into that, the more you're actually going to start feeling as well. The more you breathe out, the more you're going to breathe in. and the more you're going to notice. But the spine is like a seesaw. So what happens here also happens here. So when people are shut down sexually and relationally and the root chakra, when they're not grounded and they're sexually a bit messed up, their perception of things and their spiritual connection is also messed up because it's a seesaw. That's why when we see lordosis, we see stuff going on in the neck. You know, when we see all of this stuff, it's happening through the entire spine. It also happens through the chakras in the same way. And you can start looking at people and seeing what's going on with them, right? Where are there little issues that can be worked on? You can look at yourselves in the same way. Because like I said at the start, we're all a bit fucked, right? And as soon as you can get used to that, you can actually have compassion for others when they're also screwed up. It's how I try and build my patience. So I can be very impatient, you know? So this energy anatomy, we're relating it to the chakra system. And you can hear it coming out of people's mouths, right? As soon as you get to here, the system starts recovering. So as soon as you can get people breathing to that point, things will start shifting and changing. But in order to do that, you've got to get them out of the head and down to here first. So sitting in a chair or sitting comfortably, whatever works for you, I would love you to take a breath all the way out. Eyes open or shut. When you breathe in as far as your breath wants to go and just watch it. Pause with the breath full. Take a little extra sip of breath. That's a reset breath. Now watch the breath leave your body, let it spread out of you. Watch it go all the way out. As you breathe in this time, I want you to focus on that lower chakra. Just breathe into it. Notice where the breath comes to, and then again, just let it leave the body. If at any point you feel the need to reset the breath with that extra sip of breath at the top, do that. And I want you to naturally fall into just breathing and watching where the breath comes up to and watching the breath leave your body. I want you to notice how your breath is moving. And then, after you've done that for a few breaths, I want you to turn your palms face up. And once you've done that for a few breaths, I want you to turn the palms face down again. Once you find yourself breathing into that lowest chakra, we're going to bring up to just below the belly button. We're just going to focus our attention there as we breathe. Maybe we turn the palms face up again. See if you notice any difference in the breath as you change your palms up and down. Really watch that breath leave the body. And we're going to shift to the next chakra, which is the solar plexus. And you're just bringing your attention there, nothing major. And now resting with the palms face up and keeping them that way. Start to breathe and notice the heart, chest area. I just want you to sit with that. If your head is dropped down, I want you to lift your chin up as if you're letting the sunlight shine on your forehead. Now, as you keep your focus around this heart area, you might even notice your heart at the back, like from your spine backwards. But maybe not. Maybe that's not there for you today. And I want you to imagine a scene. Could be a scene where you're at your best, where you're standing confident or doing something confidently. Could be where you're doing something where you feel truly loved. Maybe it's playing with a small child, being hugged by a parent, sun shining on your face as the ocean laps at your feet. I want you to hold the image. And as you hold the image, I want you to start to paint in all the bits and pieces, the smell, the sound, the colours, and the feeling. In every cell of your body, I want you to start bringing in the feeling of that moment. And as your body aches and groans and your nose itches, you're going to tell it to stay, because you are the master and you are not your body. And as your mind flits and loses focus, you're going to call it back in as you breathe out. You're going to come back to your image. And as your leg falls asleep, your back aches a little bit, you're going to stay with the image. You're going to keep pulling that feeling through your body, and as you breathe out, you're going to let it spread around you. Really notice how you feel. Really paying attention to that feeling. When you're ready, you're going to bring your palms together in a prayer mudra, thumbs to touch your chest. No rush. As I bring my palms together, I'm going to drop my head and I'm going to take a vow to remember this feeling through every cell of my body. And I'm going to practice it again before I go to bed tonight. As I bring my thumbs to my forehead, I give thanks for everyone in the room, seen and unseen, that comes to sit with us. And this is the moment where if I need help with anything, I'm going to ask existence for help. And as I ask, I know everything is answered. And so I'm going to give thanks that the answers and the request is being dealt with and it is speeding its way to me. Because you are a powerful magnet and existence knows you're here and it abhors a vacuum. So you are accounted for. When you are ready, allowing your hands to drop and bringing yourself back to the room. Doesn't take much to change shit. It really doesn't. But people get caught up in fight or flight and running from the tiger, and they excuse it, they forget it, they take a break. That took us, 3 minutes? How do you feel?
Relaxed.
Relaxed, right? Different. If I'm practicing stress all the time, if my cells are geared towards stress all the time, what do they automatically do when I wake up in the morning? When I stop, when I lie down? What does your mind do? Ow. Ooh, And does it rest and digest? No, right? If I do that before I eat, am I going to absorb food better? Am I going to chew more? Am I going to pay attention to what I'm doing in the moment instead of right? Lots of cultures bless their food. Part of the reason is to take that moment to calm the fuck down first, right? And enter into rest and digest. Some people are not good eating with others, so don't. Some people need sound, some people need no sound. Whatever it takes to calm your system, I don't give a fuck. There's a whole lot of rules about when you should go to bed and what you should do with this and that and blue light and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, there's knock-on effects to melatonin. Definitely. But if sitting down and looking at a screen is what's going to calm me first versus I'm not going to calm down, who gives a shit about the blue light effects of melatonin, right? That's for later. That's further on down the line when I've gotten good at relaxing. Meditation is chill the fuck out with yourself and deal with yourself. Deal with your madness. It's okay. We're all a bit mad. That's clear, right? I've been studying this shit for 25 years and I was brought up in it. Just going to go through back to energy anatomy. A whole lot of interesting stuff through there. I'm just like, this is my Aura ring. Who knows what Aura is? Cool. Go gadget device that measures sleep. It's meant to be the best at it. I don't know. There's a lot of competitors on the market these days. But it measures HRV. It measures sleep cycles. It measures REM sleep, light sleep, and deep sleep. Thank you guys so much. And this is my sleep score between 10:56 a.m. and 12:21. I increased my sleep score by 7. I was meditating from 10:56 to 12:21, so that's 30 minutes. I increased my sleep score by 7 points. That's not bad, right? For 30 minutes. Do you know what that is? That's deep sleep. I was sitting cross-legged awake, and I got 10 minutes of deep sleep in that 30 minutes. Now, I'm a practice meditator, but actually the truth is, sometimes practice meditators are dicks in their head because they think they're doing something when all you're doing is chilling the fuck out, right? People are mindfulness practitioners and meditators. There's no such thing as a meditator. It is a state. You are not a meditator. You're a human being, and this is home. And you are coming home, just like sitting on the floor is home. Just like breath is home. No breath, no life. All those people who aren't breathing out, they are dying of chronic diseases. In America, it's a 75% reality because they eat shit, they live in a shitty environment, and none of them are breathing out, right? Most of them aren't exercising. That is not genes. There's no fucking way that's genes, right? 30 minutes. REM sleep, 12 minutes. It's a good meditation right there. Bit of light sleep there too, as well, which is good prep. So out of 30 minutes, I got 22 minutes between deep and REM. It's probably worth your time, don't you think? But start small. 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Abraham Hicks, who's a channel, Esther Hicks, talks about it takes 16 seconds to start changing your frequency. That little bit of love you just gave yourself, you started changing your frequency. And you do not have to sit down to breathe it in and out. You can do it right now while I'm talking to you without all the extra woo-woo shit, right? And I'm not against mudras, by the way, but people project bullshit with this. With honor, I use this science. It is for me. It is not for you to recognize who I am. Same with I'm a meditator. I'm not a meditator, I'm an idiot, actually. I'm an idiot that's been studying these systems for 20-something years, and what I can tell you is breathe out, sit down, and don't worry about so much. And have a good time. Play. And have an understanding that there have been things that have been picked apart in our system. When it comes to when I went to the pelvic floor session earlier, one of the things the woman said to do was to sit your clients down in a chair if they're pregnant because there's a lot of pressure on their pelvic floor. I would say if you get clients that are wanting to have children, get them sitting on the floor, start tuning their pelvic floor straight away. And the last thing I'm going to do with them is start sitting them in chairs to push heavy weights over their head. If I need to start adjusting the weight and they can't stand up, I'm going to change the exercises completely, right? I still want them to move, but I don't need them to press lots of weight. Cables, Swiss ball exercises, lying in positions that are comfortable for them and getting them to move from there, get creative. How can I get the pelvic floor involved and the breath involved? And I'm not saying she's wrong. She was keeping you guys safe. But I'm saying maybe dig a little bit deeper because the pelvic floor in pregnancy, that's huge. Why are there so many C-sections? One, because we rush the whole labor process, right? So they induce people. That's a lovely idea, right? We're going to throw some extra hormones into the system while they're trying to give birth, like just to speed things along. How many things end up in C-sections? Most of them, right? But if I can sit like this, my pelvic floor is going to be more open. My body's naturally going to, when that relaxin kicks in, my body's going to start opening up. What do women naturally do before they're like a few weeks before they're going into labor? They start trying to clean, right? They go into nesting syndrome. Like, why? Because they're trying to open up their system to give birth. Well, get them sitting on the floor. When they're breastfeeding, get them sitting on the floor. Why? Because when they're not pregnant, this is going to build strength into their system, right? And there's a lot of things that collapse down once you've got a baby sucking everything out of you while it's growing or when you're breastfeeding it. What happens a lot to women's posture when they're breastfeeding and sitting on couches? And then they're in agony. And everybody pays attention to the baby once it comes along. The mum needs you to help her strengthen herself for all of that stuff. Well, actually getting them on the floor before they're pregnant would be where I'd start. And once they're breastfeeding, encouraging them to be on the floor. Even if they need to lean against something, they're actually still going to be stronger. What happens to my blood pressure when I lift weights? Goes up, right? But what happens afterwards? Goes down. What happens when I get up from the floor? But overall, just like weights, it tunes it for lower blood pressure. High blood pressure is one of the things that happens during sustained fight or flight response. So how am I going to lower blood pressure? I'm going to have them sit on the floor. But I'm going to have them do it in a way that's easy for them. Getting up and down off the ground. Well, if they can't do it without hands or without help, I'm going to get them to use furniture. Why not? Pelvic floor stuff, unless you've got a hypertonic system, starting to get people to do really simple things, squeezing their pelvic floor, right? Focusing in there. Get the breath going. Right? Get it moving. This is more advanced. This would be even more advanced, right? Balancing out here. Lying straight down, moving those legs, trying that dish pose, right? Watching out for this rocking around. So if you all want to try it, you can actually just lie down with a hand under your back and just put a little bit of pressure in there, squeezing the pelvic floor and putting pressure into like just below the belly button. And then as they move the leg with the breath out, it goes back, nothing moves, I keep the pressure on there. Right? And get them moving with breath. You want to get them breathing. Do it all the time. Weights and running and all the exercise stuff, it's going to get them breathing. But getting them aware of their breathing is really, really important as well. Not just kind of tripwiring it by getting them exercising. which is kind of the first thing that we do. But if they're not stable in the pelvis and you get them running, you might get an injury. You get them squatting, weight loading on their back, they're not stable in the pelvis, lower back problems, knee problems. I mean, knees don't break because knees break. Knees break because the system's broken through the chain, right? The foot is not working, the breath is not working, the system is overstressed, the hips are off, the pelvic floor is not doing its thing. You guys got any questions? I stunned them all into silence.
Being hypertonic,
Yes.
how would you approach that differently?
Hypertonic. So I usually do want to have at least some inkling of the story, but you have to tread with care because you never know what it is. But hypertonic, I'm always going to do a full body assessment. What's actually happening in this body? Is it hypertonic because everything is tight? Or is it hypertonic because nothing else is tight, right? Is it hypertonic because there's a trauma? Like, what is going on? Is it hypertonic because this person is stuck in fight or flight and just doesn't breathe? And look, you can be in a trauma response and not have a significant, massive, hideous thing that's happened to you, right? You just need a baby to feel unsafe, to be a sensor type like you, to have a hypersensitive body and to feel unsafe because mum is stressed out because it's her first kid, right? And now what do kids do? Well, as Gabor Mate says, kids are tiny narcissists, right? So they make it all about themselves. So mum is a superhero because she can turn on lights and provide food and she can do all the magical things. So she's superhuman. So it must be my fault. And so now that kid is stressed because it's trying to make the world safe and it isn't a superhuman. It's trying not to be forgotten. And that's when you get into some really interesting relational styles, right? If you guys have read anything on that, you know. You get into narcissism is the big thing now, right? Narcissism is the huge popular thing to talk about. And enmeshment trauma, or what do they call them? The toxic empath? No such thing as a toxic empath. It's enmeshment trauma. An empath is an empath, right? An empath has boundaries, quality boundaries. Enmeshment trauma has no boundaries because it's desperately giving them all away to find safety. A narcissist is going, don't forget me or I'll punch you in the face. I'm going to make a lot of noise so I'm not going to be forgotten. Because mum was so stressed out, that was the way they dealt with it, you know? And we sit around going, one is worse than the other. Both of them are tricking you into loving them one way or another, and it's a not self-reality. It's not actually who they are. It's just trauma response playing out in clever defense mechanism. The unfortunate thing about both of them is they are clever defense mechanisms. One always looks like the good guy, and one will always be isolated so much that they will probably never hear anyone tell them that they're a shithead, you know? And that's oversimplifying it. There are different relational styles and stuff like that, but to me, narcissism is a relational style built around defense mechanism. It's not a personality disorder, to me. Especially the way we're all suddenly becoming people who diagnose that, right? Everybody's calling everyone a narcissist. It's like, we all have some pretty interesting narcissistic tendencies. Whoever's tried to make their body look flawless. That's narcissism, right? Because you're trying to make yourself perfect for some reason to make yourself valuable. So thank you guys so much for your honesty. You're more than welcome to get in touch with me. I meant to put my Instagram up there or something like that. I'm at Erin Zen Warrior online on Instagram, and you can find me under Erin Palashik as well. You're more than welcome to ask for these as well. I didn't put them with the crew so that you can download them because I was too slow for that. I was still trying to work out what I wanted in. If anybody wants to ask me any questions afterwards, I'm going to head out that way so that people can have the room, and you're more than welcome to come up and ask. Thank you so much. Oh, and I know this was a lot, by the way. Just